It is my pleasure to introduce the panel to you. All right, we'll start on the end with Maria, a face that you hopefully know and love now, and give her a little thanks for the props for the lovely party last night. Maria Dubuc is the founder and owner of Marketing by Design, a packaging and design firm with deep expertise across private label brands in categories including grocery and non-food. She and the team enthusiastically support their clients in building brands that change the world. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you.
Next to Maria is Allan Dougall. Allan is the VP of Strategy and Services at Fish Agency, a retail-focused creative design firm that integrates various disciplines to take a fresh look at building private brands. As a marketer, Allan's specialty is to design compelling marketing programs that deepen customer engagement across all stages of the customer lifecycle. Welcome, Allan. And next to me is Lisa Barrett. Lisa joins us from the Meijer team, where she is a brand and packaging manager. She has over 15 years in the marketing space and is passionate about supporting her team and partners and using packaging to tell the stories of private label products that are sold at Meijer. Welcome.
Thank you.
So as we did yesterday, we'll do a little bit of a tech check and give each of you an opportunity to talk a little bit about your organizations and your approach to innovative and creative design when it comes to sustainable packaging. Lisa, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so I'm from Meijer. For those of you that aren't familiar with Meijer, we are located in the Midwest, over 250 stores. We're privately held. Founded in 1934, we were really the pioneers of the superstore that you know today. I support the brand teams across the entire box, which was really fun. We have a heavy presence in grocery and fresh, but we also got to do a lot of other fun things like pet food I've been talking about. It's so much fun picking out the pets that go on the bag, and we just really love to understand the strategy from the merchandising team and how that translates on pack, and how much you can say not only just through words, but through design that we're really passionate about. You know, how are we pulling the levers on some of our premium brands to convey to the customers that it's premium? And then we also have our Better For You brand, where I think the sustainability is a really big part of that, and how we communicate that on pack. And greenwashing too. I think we love third-party claims. We rely heavily on third-party claims. We always talk about we're very thrifty at Meijer. Our teams are very lean. We don't have the resources to go out and vet all of the factories. While the teams do a really good job to see where things are made and to understand what's going on and the quality that it's made, we really do rely on third-party certifications. I think another piece of that is just educating the customer too. We're going up against a lot of national brands, and if our customer is aware of that claim, it just makes sense. We don't need to reinvent the wheel and confuse things. So we have gone out publicly with our sustainable packaging goals, even though we are privately held. I echo a lot of what Laura said. We're all kind of in this together. And while we are privately held, we hold a lot of information close, but I think this is a space where we can all compete together and really build on these goals and help each other out. And I think the more of us that get involved, the easier it'll be. We'll get more technology to be able to help some of these things that are really expensive.
Yeah, it was interesting to see in Laura's information where Meijer showed up just at the line and pretty much everything. So your customer, you know right where to meet your customer, it sounds like. Wonderful, thank you. Allan, how about you?
All right, well, just to build on what you already introduced me as, you know, I'm with the Fish Agency, and we're a design agency, and so we're very focused on designing the interactions you have with the consumer, both on pack but throughout that whole retail journey. So through store design and the campaigns we use to talk to consumers at shelf, throughout the shopper's journey, and even before and after you get at the store. So that's the way we look at it, and with regards to sustainability, we see sustainability as an opportunity, and I think some of the discussions we've had today already are framing it up as that. Sustainability is absolutely a global challenge. We're all here because we believe that, but it's an opportunity for business to build private brands to help consumers tackle the global crisis, and that's how we need to look at it. And so the solutions are going to be building some business cases where we're making investments that actually yield a return and attracting new customers, and building private brands. So it's the opportunity that's sitting in front of us, and let's go get it.
Let's go get it. Maria, how do you and the team think about sustainable design?
Well, I'm Maria, Marketing by Design, for those of you who don't know me. And what Juli said was we're trying to change the world. And I found this old business card that I had from years ago that said, changing the world 10,000 SKUs at a time. So I thought I'd bring it to show you and prove to you that I have a strong passion and a long background. We do package design and branding primarily in the private brand space, but we have a long history in natural and organic. And, it's really based on a passion, and we really want to make a difference on a bigger scale. And that's where I feel like the private brand industry has an opportunity to do that. So our approach is really forcing ourselves into the conversation, or forcing the conversation to happen. And then when that conversation does happen, what we're realizing that it requires a lot of people. It's, one conversation we had, a meeting we had last week about one single project had 25 people in the room, and all 25 people were essential to making this happen. Now, I'm not going to say that, the original goal was about sustainable packaging.
Right.
But what things came to the top was, well, how are we going to save money? How is it going to be cheaper? I'm like, oh, cheaper? Shoot, that wasn't really the plan. So I think just bringing those people together and having that conversation as early on in the process as possible. Whereas, we feel like sort of, and Allan, you could probably agree with me, that design, people didn't ask design to get involved. It was engineering, it was, and probably Lisa, you have more to say about that. But we're sort of pushing ourselves into the conversation earlier so that we could communicate authentically on pack. So I think that, the greenwashing, but also the green hushing was a really great term to hear from Laura. That was really interesting, because every single one of my customers are like, oh no, we're not there yet. We're not good enough yet. We can't talk about it yet. And they don't want to sit up here and talk about the small wins. Right. So that's why I think, Lisa, it's great that you're up here to talk about the things that you're doing, and all the retailers that are here.
Building on that theme, how have you been successful in changing the conversation around the ROI of sustainability? And we read sustainability as an investment, and it's come up a few times in the last day and a half that it's just more expensive. But Allan, do you want to continue to build on that? How do you think about a new math, or communicate a new math to get your clients thinking?
It's a conversation. I actually had this conversation, I think 2 or 3 times already today, and it's the conversation started yesterday. This is expensive. A more sustainable packaging option is more expensive. Yes, but let's view that as an investment. And when we build any business case, an investment needs to yield a return in the form of cost savings, margin expansion, or increased revenue by adding new customers or getting them to buy more. It's the way we frame up these opportunities in our organizations is no different for sustainability than it should be for anything else. And I think we saw today the data that says customers are willing to pay more. Sustainability is a way to attract new customers, so the business case is there to be had. If it's foundational to your value proposition of your private brand, or maybe a secondary, third, tertiary message. Like we worked with a cannabis brand who was trying to set itself apart, and so they developed a more sustainable form of production, and so sustainability was built into the DNA of that brand. And so rather than packaging their product in a ubiquitous white jar tub, we helped them find a paperboard solution that, was actually childproof, was actually scent-proof, meet the criteria. It cost about twice the amount per unit for them, but that was what fit with the brand, that was going to yield the right return for that brand. And so that's how the math, I think, changes.
I love it. How do you talk internally at Meijer, Lisa?
I think we're really fortunate that it comes from our owners and the top down that it is important. One of our founders, Fred Meijer, said he wanted to leave the world in a better place than when he entered it, and it's a quote that we hear again and again, and it's just really cool that it's from the top down, and Meijer truly cares about enriching the lives of the communities that they serve, and so it's coming from the top down. We just had a letter go out from our chief marketing and merchandising officer out to our own brand vendor community to say, these goals, we came out with them in 2018. I think like a lot of people, some of the goals got paused over COVID, right? Like we are just trying to get things to shelf, and you really have to figure out what's important at this time. On-shelf availability is very important to us. Sustainability kind of took a back seat. So we're, back to this, and it's great to have a letter go out to our suppliers to let them know these are our goals. We need to be very mindful of them. And then I think it's also picking your battles. We have a variety of brands that have a different need state. So if we have a premium brand, Better For You, those are things that we'll really go after. We've got a little bit more margin to play with. But when we look at our Meijer First Label, it really is our opening price point value brand, and it's serving that customer. So we don't want to pass that along to them. So I think it's really just making a difference in the space where you can, and then putting things off to the side. Like we've put foam meat trays off to the side for right now as we try to figure out, does that come from margin or does that get passed along to the customer? Inflation just makes it really difficult to make those decisions. So we've decided to pause on some of the things. Let's move forward with the areas that we can make a difference. And I think another piece of that, we're always at the end of the conveyor belt, right? We're moving things along, and then it's packaging and design, and I always laugh that we're the heroes because we get things on shelf when sourcing can't get it on time or they're reformulating.
Never.
But we're also fortunate, too, that we get invited to kickoff calls sometimes a year before things make it to us. So we get a seat at the table to give our wish list. And a lot of times we're looking at it from a brand perspective, that if it's our premium brand, we want to make sure, can we get a glass bottle? Can we get black lids? Can we get clear labels and all the design things? But then we're also asking about what options are out there. We're doing our research ahead of time to know, what are we doing about resealable pouches? Like, it's just so difficult to make those decisions. So I think just being a part of the conversations up front, so you're not just given something at the end. And we all know it's really hard once you've sourced everything, you've agreed on price, you really want that up front. And the people who are great at sourcing can have those conversations instead of in the 11th hour, we've awarded business and now we're trying to go back to get more expensive packaging, and we're at the cost of them. So yeah, I think it's just a balancing act. Pick your battles and figure out where you can put your efforts in, and just pause some things for the time being until hopefully technology catches up, or we come up with better solutions.
Absolutely. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about solutions in a moment, but what I hear from a through line from both yesterday and today is it's taking that step back, making sure you're having that open discovery conversation so that you know what the aligned strategies are early on, asking those questions as trusted partners, and then prioritizing and aligning and moving forwed.
Well, I think some of the suppliers too, Julie, are really appreciating the retailer's involvement and investment in it, and not just talking about it at the bidding process, but way before. Like, we're already in partnership with these suppliers, so let's talk to them now and say, what can we do in 6 months, 12 months? And we as retailers, what I'm finding successful and the suppliers really appreciate is when the retailers kick in some funds to get it started, just to get the conversation going, to get the right people in the room and those 25 people on the call. But I've noticed that lately.
No, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, it's helpful.
So Lisa, you brought up an interesting point too about prioritizing. How, and I'll put this to Allan and Maria to talk about a little bit too. How do you think about building sustainable equity into brands differently? What's the framework, or how do you take your clients and partners through that? Allan, let's start with you.
Let me start? Well, I think there are two kinds of brands, and it's frankly a little easier for one. So there are brands that are built from the ground up where sustainability is foundational to the brand equity.
Right.
We're talking Amazon Aware, we're talking Everspring, Target's Everspring. And so what that means is sustainability is right at the top of the messaging hierarchy. So that means it's got prominent position on your PDP. Any messaging you're doing off pack, at shelf, at in store, out of store, that's the lead message. So that's a little more straightforward. And I think the key there to success is being very clear in defining what you mean by sustainability. We talked about the levers to sustainability are varied. So what do you mean by that? And I think it's important that we simplify that message for consumers. And we like to separate the message or claims into the attributes and the benefits of those attributes. So attributes are tangible characteristics of your product that lead to a sustainability claim, right? Those are real, those are tangible, and ideally they're things you can touch and feel. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. And then we like to focus the off-pack communication is the bigger story, because that's the more complicated part of the story. What does bio-based plastic mean? I talk about bio-based plastic. Okay, let me tell you, say through a connected package, you just click on a QR code, I go to your website, I'm now engaging with your brand. We know that the values-based consumer is interested in going online to read a little bit more, and that's where you can tell the story about that. So that's easier. Where it gets harder is for brands, I think a lot of your brands, where sustainability is not the core foundation of the brand. So sustainability now becomes a secondary, tertiary message, but it's still beneficial. And how do we get that unpacked? Because that's, very often, I know for myself, I'm a big believer in gotta stop doing that. I'm a big believer in post-consumer recycled product and packaging. So I'm searching around for what's your post-consumer recycled content in the packaging. How hard do you think it is to find that on most packs?
Very hard.
It is hard. And why? that's a real easy claim to elevate, bring forward. So it's bringing those secondary messages to a little bit more prominence, and maybe that's the role of your off-pack communication as well.
Yeah, and
Maria, what
being
would you add?
authentic about
Please.
it, and really, we're not doing our clients any good if we're helping to, I don't know if I could swear, but BS, the message.
You can say BS,
It's got
that's
to be
fine.
true. It's got to be real. And there's so many claims, like you're saying. You've got to read 100 things before you find that, or you've got to scan that QR code. But you've got this much space on a PDP to communicate all these different things, all these certifications that are all really important. Where is that going to go? And we're also about to embark upon in the US some more changes on packaging and this front of pack situation where we might end up having to put the healthy claims on front of pack. We need to worry about that because where's it going to go? And all these other, really great certification programs that we want to communicate, you've got to, count on them picking it up, turning it around, and reading what you're looking for. So I think that, being authentic and then design really matters because you really have to look at what's most important in the hierarchy of those claims and what goes on the front, what goes on the side, what goes on the back. We can't yet count on scanning that QR code and people reading it. I
Taking
think
that
we will
action?
be able to in the
Still a
future.
subset, yeah.
But
We had a question yesterday about how do you think about value brands specifically in messaging sustainability. Any specific thoughts you'd offer? I'd put that to the group.
Lisa?
Yeah, you start.
I want to know what you have to say about that.
Yeah, it's hard. So Meijer First Label is seen across the entire store, and that is our value brand. And every brand has a different need state for us, and the value brand is a national brand equivalent. So I think the good thing is that we have a brand charter for every single one of our brands that we understand who we're serving, what's the purpose, and we go back to it. It's on my desktop. I open it 10 times a day,
Perfect.
looking at packaging and making sure we're meeting that objective. But I think you also need to look at category specific. Who are you competing against? And we try to be flexible within that design space. We need to see what the national brand is doing, and then we're also looking at other private label, other stores. While the customer might not be right there making the decision, we're all fighting for market share. So I think you just really have to understand your categories, and we lean very heavily on our category experts, the buying team, to know what's important in this category, and I think that's when you can figure out, do we need to be making these claims? Because I think there are categories that it's more important to somebody to have sustainable packaging, or it really is just an OPP and people don't care. So I think it's just really relying on the category experts to find out what's important. And again, where to spend your time. That's all we do every day is prioritize our time back to, is this worth it? Rely on them to get the information. And then our hierarchy of what we want to communicate on pack. And if you run out of room at the end, then it's just not going to go on pack.
Yeah. I think we talked about often we need to celebrate those small wins, the small victories. So yesterday we were talking about Loblaws President's Choice, and Solange was talking about the coffee packaging, the switch to the coffee packaging. They made a big deal about that, a little bit on pack and a lot off pack to tell the story of what that's a national brand equivalent brand. That's fundamentally a value brand.
Right.
And that's one of those little wins. It's not going to be what that brand is all about, but it's still something to celebrate. I'll contrast that with another example. There's a hard goods retailer in Canada that just went through an exercise where they took one of their hard good brands and did what Christopher, they did exactly what you're asking for. They went and audited all their packaging and shrunk it all a bit and found they could save on average like 5% material. So sure, there's a business case. They reduced material, didn't talk about it, got no credit from the consumer, and sure, that's not what the brand was all about, but that's a missed opportunity to tell a story and make it a secondary attribute of the brand. Yeah.
They hushed it.
They hushed it. The green hushed it. I love that term.
Oh my God, I can't wait to use that term.
We're going to talk about that a little bit more too.
One of my clients, I'm like, stop the hushing.
Yeah, stop the hushing.
Maybe that's our new slogan.
We heard from Laura and others yesterday that consumers have certain expectations around a brand when it claims to be sustainable, or expectations of sustainability within brands. What are other expectations from your consumers that you have in your perspective as you think about what a brand means to be sustainable, and what sustainable efforts are seen as having impacts for your customers and consumers? Maria, can I start with you?
Me? Okay. Well, I mean, consumers want everything right now. They want it all, and they're not willing to sacrifice anything. So even if it is an open price point, they still want to see the effort. They, just because they can't afford something more doesn't mean that they don't care or they don't deserve. That's a common, argument that I've had with customers before. Well, this is just a cheap brand. It doesn't need to be pretty, or it doesn't need to look good. That doesn't really make sense to consumers. Consumers is a consumer is a consumer. It doesn't matter how much money they have, So I think I'm not really answering the question right.
They want everything. No, that's in your experience, if that's what you're seeing.
Yeah.
Allan, how similar is that to your experience?
Yeah, well, I think the foundational level, so what have we seen in the last 2 days? We saw the pack is the first place the consumer's looking, and for many of us, it's the only place we're looking, despite what it is. Sometimes we do want to talk off pack.
Yeah.
And I think what we need at a bare minimum is clarity. Clarity and just simplicity around what claims, what attributes we have, and then secondarily the benefits of that. The next level, though, I think is interesting, and Simon was talking yesterday about the values-based consumer. Like, we know we have consumers who are very informed, the sustainable consumer. They're actively seeking sustainability and probably have their own definition of what that means to them.
Right.
Most of us are more of that abstract values-based consumer, and really our fundamental need is just an abstract notion of betterment. I want to make better choices for myself. I want to make better choices for the planet, better choices for animals. And I think what we want to do as brands and how we message and talk about our brands is, okay, here's how we're making it easier make a better choice, and absolutely reduce the perceived compromise, because most consumers want to make better, but I don't want to pay more. I don't want to sacrifice convenience. I don't want to sacrifice efficacy. That's the reality. That's unfortunately the unfortunate truth. So if we can offset any perceived compromise they need to make, and so it's a value equation. So sell up the better, minimize the perceived cost of it, and that's where we'll win.
And that's where you hit the balance. How about the Meijer customer? What do they think about when they're looking for sustainable brands or claims that make an impact?
Yeah, I think we're fortunate that we know who our customer is on the retail side. We have customer loyalty programs, a lot of data that goes into it to figure out exactly what the customer is looking for, and I think that's why we do have so many brands. We have over 35 own brands across the store, which is a lot to manage, but I think there's a lot of need states there. So we're not trying to make every brand mean all things to all people, and I think that's really the key takeaway is what is this brand meant to be? And again, put your efforts into it. So True Goodness by Meijer is our organic, better for you brand. And we know that customer does care a little bit more about what they're putting into their body and also better for the world. So I think it's just, again, going back to the need state. And then is it worth it? Is that customer going to make the investment, or could we lose them because we're increasing the price by 10 cents to make up for that packaging?
Right. Perfect.
Good point.
When you look at innovation in the packaging space, when you think about sustainability, whether it's going beyond the claims, but the structure, the substrates, what sort of innovation are you seeing that you're excited about?
I don't know if it's really innovation, but we look, so in the sourcing bid with our Meijer first label, we're usually looking at what is the national brand equivalent doing, because we're going to sit on shelf next to them. And we ask our suppliers, we'd like something similar in pack size. And I think one thing, again, competing in this space altogether, is we really do need national brands to lead the way on this. And I think a really big point that people don't have in their goals is just to reduce packaging, right? Like we're going up against, and not to say that the customer is not savvy enough to understand that if we made a box half the size and it was the same amount of ounces, I'm not discrediting the customer, but I think we're all busy, right? And you're not gonna sit there and figure out per ounce, this is the same thing. But I think that we are all in this together, and we need some national brands to lead the way in their packaging, just to reduce packaging altogether. That milk carton example just really hit home, and it's like, this is really a space that we're turning our wheels to find a material that's not readily available. But why don't we just reduce the material that we're using. And so I really wish that national brands could lead the way in that space so we can follow, because we know that if we do put a smaller pack size on shelf, we're busy people. I don't know that the customer is going to realize that it's the same thing. So I just wish reducing packaging could be a goal for the future.
Well, and I love the point that you brought up earlier too, Allan, around finding a way to tell a story. So if it is the right thing to do, what is the story to tell? But are there other innovations that you're seeing in the sustainability space that you'd like to share?
So I think we talk a lot about recyclability. It's important. It's part of the solution, if you will. But material reduction, one of the other R's, we don't talk enough about that. We just did, but but where you can find interesting ways to serve the purpose, some form of packaging currently is. I'll give an example. There's a really neat product called Apeel. I don't know if anyone's heard of it. APEEL. Like, it's fascinating. And so for those who don't know it, I'm going to see if I get this right. They use what are called mono and diglycerides. So what that is, it's just a chemical that's in the outer peel of produce, and they just apply a little bit more of it. It's edible, it's fine, and they so essentially provide the produce a more effective peel. It's like avocados and mangoes, and then extends shelf life. We know food waste is one of the big unseen challenges we face. But it also, for example, an English cucumber, it negates the need for the plastic wrap.
Right.
It can actually, it gets the same shelf life without that. So that's more of those, bring them on, right? And then there's some people here who represent some very innovative forms of plastic. Like, we all recognize plastic in its various forms as bad, but it's a challenge. It gets a bad rap, pun half intended, but it's a dad joke. Come on, I had it. Right, so. I think Eastman and there's own brand solutions here who are both developing plastics that break down in the environment, not in a special facility. And if we start finding if we can't find other ways to do the functions plastic serves, let's make the plastic better. And that's fraught with all kinds of challenges, and consumers are really been taught plastic is bad, so it's hard. It might be hard to go back into plastic if you're not already in plastic, but I think the path forward, I do believe sustainable plastics are in our future in some form.
Wonderful. Well, I know we're headed into lunch, so the last question that I'll lead from the stage here before we break is that we've heard a lot about collaboration a little bit yesterday. We've even started our conversation today talking about collaboration. It seems like it's pretty critical to most sustainability launches. I'm wondering if there's any other ways that you've found a collaboration to be effective that you haven't had a chance to talk about today that you'd like to surface. And Maria, I see that look on your face. You're thinking about something fun. I'll start with you.
Well, I mean, I already sort of talked about it, was, forcing from a design agency point of view of just poking our nose in and starting to, force that conversation when we normally weren't necessarily in that conversation. So, really putting our collective heads together, and it takes a lot of heads to make something happen and to make a difference. And, I'm excited about that everybody seems to be on the same path, that people want to start working together. I was excited to see Fair Trade and the Marine Stewardship Council and, them coming together and sharing in a campaign. I mean, to me, that's really exciting. I'm excited to some of my retailers, and this is like from the previous question, actually, like one of them is building a plant for compostable meat trays. Like, they're stepping up from a retailer point of view. Now, they're probably doing it to, again, save money and, all these things, but, it's just, I think that it's all in the right direction. So I think that if we, just keep moving forward at the fast pace that we're going, and everybody keeps talking about it, and there's conferences like this and the SPC that's in Boston right now, and that people are attending. I'd love to see more retailers attend. I'd like to see more suppliers attend too, so that we're all having these conversations together and working together. So I hope that that's what will happen, and then we could change the world.
10,000 SKUs at a time. I love it. Allan, how about you? Are there secrets to collaboration that you haven't had a chance to hit on?
Maybe I'll just circle back to some of the points that were made earlier. getting involved, those of us who often jump in at the end of the process and bringing a brand to market, it's better if we can bring early, because good design thinking is foundational around the consumer, and the consumer problem to be solved is at its core. And it's nice if you have everyone at the table early and build those attributes into the product design, the package design, right? And so often when we're working on a brand, the packaging structure is already defined, that's been built into the business case, and your hands are tied. So there's opportunity that's missed, right? And sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes there would have been easy opportunities to do something a little differently, to help tell your story a little better, build that equity, and therefore use sustainability as a way to build a return for your business.
Right.
So it's that it's brand management, category management, and design management, if you will, all coming together at the beginning of the process, not at the end. Sounds like you guys have that crack though, right, Lisa?
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah, no, please. How do you think Meijer did such a great job building that type of culture? Because I don't think that's typical. It certainly hasn't been typical in my experience.
Yeah, we are a cross-functional team, which you think would divide us, but I think it's actually, we sit within marketing, and then sourcing sits within another area. And so we're so used to cross-collaboration. We have regular meetings where we're going through all of our projects, what's going on, and we try to get ahead of things. So I think it's really collaborating internally and just building relationships internally. I have a really good relationship with our sourcing team, and I'm constantly talking to them, like, what can we do for each other? Sometimes I do have to absorb design costs when I don't want to, because they're part of a deal that I want to be able to support. So I think it's just really building relationships internally. And building relationships with the suppliers too. We're the end of the line. My team is responsible for the how to recycle input. When we get things back that it's not recyclable, we're passing that information back to the suppliers. How can we support this? How could we make this a rolling change in the future to get into a different type of packaging? And then I'd say the last thing too is just collaborating with other retailers. We talk about competing, and we really do want to compete, because we think that it all makes us retailers better if we're competing with each other, giving our customers better experience, better product. We collaborate with retailers not in our footprint, and I would encourage everyone to do so. It just makes things easier. H-E-B isn't here, but I meet with them on a regular basis, and we just talk about what are things that are going on, what are you guys seeing, and it also makes you feel not so alone. Like, I'm not the only one going through this right now. Like, we commiserate together, but I think sometimes we do talk about solutions. What are things that are working for you? Have you had any aha moments? So I'd really encourage those of you that are looking to collaborate with somebody outside of your footprint. I mean, even if it's going to Canada, to just set up a weekly call or a monthly call, quarterly call, just to find out what's going on in the own brand space. And it's such a unique space. It's just really nice to talk to other people who kind of understand the things that are going on. So yeah, collaboration and relationships and learning from each other.
All right. Well, I've seen some nods throughout the audience. This is definitely a conversation that I'd encourage all of us to continue at lunch. Before we do that, if you could just join me in thanking the panel for getting the conversation started today.